Good evening. Welcome to the Human Rights Commission. This is our forum on elder abuse, and we'll start this evening with the flag salute. Commissioner McCullough.
Please join me in the salute. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Commissioner Janis, would you please read the mission statement?
The mission of the Human Rights Commission of Palm Springs is to promote improved human relations, civic peace, intergroup understanding, and the full acceptance, respect, and participation of all persons in all aspects of community life so that we may be equal in the eyes of each other.
Thank you, Commissioner Janis. And now we'll have the roll call, Lee.
Commissioner Janis? Here. Commissioner Boyd? Absent. Commissioner Yo? Here. Commissioner Bowens? Absent. Commissioner Feingold?
Here.
Commissioner Zelnis? Absent. Commissioner Catarat?
Here.
Commissioner Aguano?
Here.
And Commissioner McCullough.
Here.
Thank you, Lee. Do you want to tell us something about the agenda?
The agenda was posted in accordance with the Brown Act on June 19th.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to adjourn now and start our forum. Before we start our forum, I want to just tell people how we got here. We have a commissioner, Jim Janis, is one of the Human Rights Commissioners. He's a senior assembly member for the California Senior Legislature, and he brought up the issue. I know he's working on legislation. I threw the ball to Jim Janis, and he's got this whole thing put together, so I want to thank you very much for getting this done for us.
Well, I'd like to add to that were Margot Hamilton, who is a principal in gathering the individual personalities we have here. And I notice some of them are returning here from the last forum that we had on the same subject. So this is going to be an update on what took place in the past 2 years. Thank you, Margot.
Thank you, and I'll turn over the forum to Commissioner Joe Aguano.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another evening of educational forums sponsored by the Palm Springs Human Rights Commission. This evening's topic, as Bill mentioned, is elder abuse. The press enterprise has reported that elder abuse is significantly on the rise in San Bernardino County and especially Riverside County because of the numerous retirement communities and snowbirds who flock to the desert during the winter. According to the 2000 U.S. Census, the 65 and older population in Riverside and San Bernardino counties grew 22.5% during the past 10 years. There now are over 62,000 more persons over the age of 65 living here in 2000 than were here in 1990. This particular demographic group is highly susceptible to a variety of predators. With us this evening is a distinguished panel of experts to discuss this topic. Tonight we're going to digress from our usual format in that each panelist will give an opening address, and after everyone has a turn, we will open the panel to questions from the commissioners. First, to my immediate right, is Margot Hamilton. Margot Hamilton is the founding regional manager for the CARE program, and CARE stands for Curtailing Abuse Related to the Elderly. The CARE program of Riverside County, which has provided elder abuse training and education and advocacy for victims of consumer fraud since 1997. Margot has attended over 50 specialized trainings in elder abuse recognition, investigation, and prosecution. She has developed and presented over 200 trainings and community presentations on this topic. Margot was a legislative aide to County Supervisor Kay Cisneros for the 6 years before the supervisor's retirement from office at the end of 1996, serving as staff specialist for senior services and programs, including elder abuse issues. Margot has advocated for seniors over the past 8 years by serving on many task force, nonprofit boards, and legislative committees related to senior issues. Margot, you're going to give us a general overview?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. We're here tonight as a panel, and it's fitting because a lot of what we do is work that we do together. And really the theme for elder abuse in Riverside County is partnership and teammanship, because without that, we would really not have made the progress that we've made in the last 2 years or even in the last 6 years that we've been working on elder abuse really diligently in our county. I think our focus we need to bring forward to you as an audience our focus, which is our clients, and remind people that they are our mothers, our fathers, our grandmothers, our grandfathers. They are scientists, they're World War II vets, they're school teachers, they're volunteers. You know, they're the folks in our community who deserve our support and assistance in the later years of their lives. And even no matter what their age or condition, they still have a future, they still have dreams, they still have things they want to accomplish in their life. And it's our job as a panel and as agencies that work together on our care team to assist them in improving and maintaining that quality of life. The panel tonight, I'm proud to say, it particularly accepts that responsibility and is particularly dedicated to protecting those that we serve and those that we assist. So I wanted to kind of start tonight with an overview of the CARE program, and I think each panelist will kind of give you an overview of what they do and how they do it and how we work together as a team, what we do for one another and what we do for our respective clients. First of all, the CARE program stands for Curtailing Abuse Related to the Elderly. It is a division of Adult Protective Services. Tonight we also have Michelle Haddock here from Adult Protective Services, and you'll begin to see how CARE is different from APS after we both speak. CARE is really in charge of all the education for elder abuse related issues in Riverside County. And we, in the desert communities alone, we have educated over 3,000 seniors in elder abuse prevention. And I think we all need to realize that there's never going to be enough of us to protect everyone who's vulnerable. So if we can teach folks how to protect themselves and work on the prevention aspect, that's a really key component. We've educated about 18,500 seniors countywide since CARE has been in existence. So I think we're starting to make a dent and hopefully starting to make a difference. We do have a consumer fraud book that we use that we leave with our seniors when we do our seminars, and we have banks of speakers at our seminar that works with us. It's called When Trust is a Weapon, and every panelist you see here tonight has worked with us on those seminars, as well as FBI agents and investment counselors and folks that are experts in their arena so that they can actually help in the prevention of elder abuse. We also have gatekeeper training, and a gatekeeper is just someone who has a regular contact with seniors in their daily work life. Gatekeepers can be the clergy, it can be bankers, law enforcement. We've even done trainings to plumbers at 6:30 in the morning because they're in seniors' homes all day long. We also do an annual law enforcement training out here in Indian Wells that the Regional Access Project gives us a lot of support for, and we've done that for 6 years in a row. And this last year we just had that in May, and there were about 200 people there being trained on all of the aspects of investigation and prosecution of elder abuse. So the gatekeeper trainings are particularly important because they teach recognition and reporting of elder abuse. We always hear people say to us in elder abuse cases, gee, I knew something was wrong, wasn't quite sure what it was, and I wasn't sure who to tell. And we want to change that in our county. We want people to recognize elder abuse when they see it, and we really want them to know who to call for help so that we can step in and begin to work with that client, and APS can actually do their job as well as law enforcement. The other thing that the CARE program does is we coordinate the CARE teams, and CARE teams are multidisciplinary teams of agencies who work on elder abuse together. We have 3 teams countywide. There's one out here that meets in Palm Desert, there's one that meets in Moreno Valley, and there's also one that meets in the Hemet area. And those teams, there's about 50 members per team. There's usually 25 to 35 in attendance at each meeting, and those folks work together on challenging elder abuse cases. They work work towards protection, they work towards investigation, and often prosecution of the criminal aspect of elder abuse. They all sign confidentiality statements so that they can share information about clients and suspects. And some of the agencies that sit on that team, every panelist up here tonight with us, as well as offices like Social Security, mental health, public guardian, all of the law enforcement jurisdictions, the district attorney's office, and many, many other partners that we have in the community who work with us on the care teams. Countywide, the care teams, since their inception in 1997, have recovered over $23 million, recovered and saved for victims of financial elder abuse. So you can see that it's really starting to make a difference. And even though what we really can't measure, we can measure money that's returned. What we can't measure is the difference that's made in the lives of these victims every single day by the work that the care team does. So know about the money, but also know that quality of life is a big aspect for the focus of the care teams as well. We also provide advocacy, and this is where we start to differ from Adult Protective Services. The CARE program provides advocacy for victims of consumer fraud by businesses or by strangers, not by the people in their lives they have a relationship with. So for instance, if you were taken advantage of financially by a son or daughter, or the neighbor that you've known for a long time, or somebody that you have a relationship with, that's an Adult Protective Services case. If it was the investment counselor or the telemarketer stranger on the phone that you don't know, that kind of fraud, that's something that the CARE program will help with. So we've been providing advocacy here in the desert. We've helped about 450 people, and we work really hard towards restitution. We want folks to get their money back. We also want the bad guys put in jail, frankly, and so that's where Mark and Tony and our law enforcement agencies come in. And that is definitely part of our focus as well, but our clients do come first. We really want to guard assets. We really want to guard people's confidentiality and keep their dignity in place at the same time. So while we work with clients, we want to empower them. We don't want to do things for them. We just want to empower them to be able to help themselves and to be able to prevent further abuse as well. We deal with all kinds of fraud: auto repair fraud, contractor fraud, investment fraud, any kind of fraud by a business. That's what sweepstakes, identity theft, all of those kind of things. I want to talk a little bit about trust today, too. It's something we talk a lot about at our teams because we find that many of our victims and our clients are sort of victimized by a trust relationship that they've had with someone. And it plays a huge role. Elders are naturally trusting because they basically grew up in a time where people were trustworthy, and that's probably not true anymore. We see trust used as a weapon more and more against our elders. Whether it's a contractor trying to build a relationship with an elder so they can borrow money or do work that's not necessary on their home or their mobile home. Those are the kind of trust issues that we see a lot of. We had a case in Riverside County that our district attorney and our law enforcement agencies were very involved in. Deputy District Attorney Paul Fick was involved in that case, and investigator Leonard Ortiz. And it's a gentleman whose name is Chris Lamb. And he's right now doing 26 years in prison, but it was for violating the trust of many different seniors who he grew a relationship with and then took advantage of over and over and over again. And our law enforcement stepped in, as well as our district attorney, and did a really awesome job of putting Mr. Lamb in an orange outfit with silver handcuffs, which is my favorite color. Anyway, we've really come a long way, and we're going to talk to you today about the infrastructure that's been built, and each panel member will kind of talk about their part, their role in what's happening in elder abuse in Riverside County. There's a saying, and I don't know who said it, but it goes like this. It says, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success. And I want you to know that I feel that elder abuse prevention and prosecution has been successful in Riverside County, and I want you to listen to each panelist tonight tell you exactly how that's occurred. It's my privilege to work with them, and I'll turn it over to Mark Mandio. I think you're going to introduce him. Is
Yes,
that right?
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Margot. Next is Mark Mendio, Deputy District Attorney for the County of Riverside. Mark has been employed with the Riverside County District Attorney's Office for 8 years and currently heads the Elder Abuse Unit within the Special Prosecutions Unit, which handles all white-collar crime. Prior to his employment with the DA's office, for 2.5 years, Mark practiced civil litigation as an associate with Gray, Carey, Ware, and Friedenrich in their San Diego office, specializing in debtor-creditor litigation. Mark?
Thank you. Kind of come in at the tail end of the process with the care team. Oftentimes, numerous cases are discussed and the care team's working on them, but it's only when they're identified as criminal cases, when they're investigated and so forth, and finally referred to the DA's office that we came in. So I'm actually kind of the tail end of the bookend here. About 3 years ago, or a little over 3 years ago, our district attorney decided to start a vertical prosecution unit, which was dedicated solely to elder abuse, and he assigned one attorney and one investigator. And of course, our whole goal was to integrate ourselves into the care team. And what it's done for us has just been incredible. I mean, basically, there are cases that we simply could not have prosecuted and would not have prosecuted in the past for a number of reasons, but for the fact that we are an integral part of the care team. From a prosecution perspective, it's just been a tremendous benefit because, we thrive on information. We need resources, we need witnesses, and all those things become available to us for prosecutions as a member of the care team. Some of the things, additionally, being a member has assisted us in doing is just, one, understanding the nature and dynamics of elder abuse. Also, we've been able to assist in effective law enforcement response. So, for instance, we may attend a meeting, questions come up, and you have a deputy district attorney who is there and is able to answer legal questions, or, is this a potential criminal case, or is it not? Or what do we need to do to develop it, and so forth. And then, of course, we can prosecute cases much more effectively and efficiently because we're part of a much bigger group. In the past, that wasn't the case. I actually had gotten a number of questions. One of the things I wanted to talk about is what is elder abuse from a prosecution perspective. And obviously, we're looking for people who are targeting elders. But that's not by any means the sole criterion. Really, as far as an elder abuse case goes, we're looking at anybody who is an elder or dependent adult who is a victim of a crime. And the reason why you want to focus special resources on those and have people with special training is because that particular victim class generally has special needs, and you need to be able to respond to them. Additionally, both our evidence code and our penal code provide for special responses and special evidentiary provisions for dealing with those types of victims. For instance, a law enforcement officer can go and videotape the statement of an elderly victim. And if that person becomes unable to testify, whether through sickness or possibly through death later on, that may be admitted into evidence. And so you have to be familiar with a lot of these special provisions that apply to elders and dependent adults to effectively
Which is
prosecute
not
those cases.
normally the case. Videotape normally is not admissible evidence.
That's correct. Generally, there are some exceptions for child victims under certain circumstances, and there's exceptions for elder victims as well. There's a number of types of cases too that we deal with, and I see that on the list you want to address here. Ones that deal with psychological harm, physical harm, financial harm, and so forth. What I'd like to do is give you kind of a detailed example of a case we recently did out here in the desert, okay? And that really involves primarily financial harm, but it I think it's a good example of how the care team really worked together to develop a case that definitely would not have been developed in the past. And that's a case of Jeffrey Walker. He was a court-appointed conservator out here in the desert. And through the care team, there had members of the care team had received reports, and I believe through APS and also the public guardian, that he potentially was taking advantage of people he was appointed to be the conservator for, financial advantage. And they were able to develop some information in that regard. They were able also to gain the attention of a detective out here, Palm Springs detective. And she went ahead and investigated and was able to find, in fact, that he had stolen over $50,000 from one of his clients. And he was immediately prosecuted for that. And he pled guilty. An account was seized with just about that amount of money, which was returned to the victim, or at that time to the public guardian. The problem is that members of the care team felt that there was a lot more going on there, and so they continued to advocate for further investigation. And they were able to get our office involved, and the special sorts of investigators that we have. We have an investigator at our office, Jerry Fox, who's has a tremendous financial background, and he's very good at these sort of forensic investigations. Well, also, in the meantime, the public guardian, who isn't here today, but they were appointed to take over all of Mr. Walker's existing cases. And they determined that there were enough irregularities that they were going to sue Mr. Walker to try to get the fees back and recover them. Well, in that process, they invited Jerry Fox over to take a look at the evidence that they did have, and he gave them suggestions on how to follow up with this, and actually sat in on court hearings, at which point it became clear that Mr. Walker was perjuring himself. And this took place over a several-month period during which they were able to subpoena documents and so forth, and additional criminal case was built where there were 4 more victims and another $185,000 in thefts that were identified. Well, he was prosecuted and eventually received 16 years in prison. And so, again, it just wouldn't have happened had we, number one, not been a part of the care team, and number two, had there not been so many different agencies talking to one another, working together, and making sure that the proper sort of law enforcement response was dedicated to this very complicated case. A couple other things. By the way, just tell me when the time is up. You asked about psychological abuse, and we see that in almost every case where there's some sort of violence, but also in our theft cases. As a matter of fact, I don't know if anybody saw the Wall Street Journal today, but there was a little blurb in the Journal that said that there was a study in Britain, and 2 years after an elderly person is burglarized, their death rate is twice as high as individuals who have not been burglarized, or elderly individuals. And that's something we've been seeing a lot. There's a tremendous amount of stress that's put on elderly victims who are essentially the victims of theft. And there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, their resources are limited. Many times they're worried about maintaining their independence, and they're worried about what the implications are of being the victim of a theft is. And thirdly, their trust is often shattered. Moreover, oftentimes their health is diminished. So the ability to simply take the emotional difficulties that come along with being the victim of a crime are much lowered. So really oftentimes thefts have much greater implications against elderly victims than they would in the general population. So the psychological abuse is tremendous, not to mention the manipulation that often goes along with that. I had one case where a little lady, elderly lady, had a huge strapping son. He was about, I would say, 6'2", and unfortunately he had a drug problem, and he was in his 30s, and he was still living with his mother. And of course, he was taking her credit cards, he was taking her ATM cards, and she'd try to confront him. She was very small, maybe 5'1", 5'2", very thin, very mild-mannered, almost meek, really. And she'd try to approach him about these things, and he would just shut her down. Now, he wasn't physical with her, but he was very verbal. He'd shut her down. He also had his drug buddies and drug girlfriends coming into the house at all hours of the night. So at one point, she's just retreated into her bedroom, and she's essentially a prisoner in her own home. And when I first met her, I thought that she was suffering from dementia. She was not very coherent. She couldn't explain the story very well. She looked terrible. I didn't know if she was going to survive to the end of the case. Luckily, she had a daughter who intervened, who took her out of that situation. And before we went to trial, the defendant pled guilty, but I had another opportunity to interview her, and her health was way improved. She was very clear, very concise, easy to understand, and it was just amazing to see what had happened. You know, an individual in that circumstance who's being psychologically abused, I think he would have killed her, and it would have never been murder because you couldn't prove it, right? But that's ultimately what would have happened to her. She was going downhill that rapidly. So that's the types of things that we see. One other thing that's been a tremendous boon to our office is we've added actually one other prosecutor and one other investigator. And we've been able to add another investigator, again, because we're a member of the CARE team. Adult Protective Services pays for the salary of that investigator, and we've been able to hire another guy who's absolutely tremendous. He has well over 18 years of experience. He's been a gang detective. He's been on the streets. He's really a guy who is the salt of the earth and knows how to investigate crimes. And recently we had a crime out in Banning where a son had robbed his mother, snuck into her house at night, was stealing from her, was surprised when she came home and hit her over the head with a hammer, knocked her down. She was bleeding all over the place, but it's a case where we had a victim who not very good at communicating because of her age and so forth. And he went out there, did all kinds of follow-up investigation, and this man has recently been convicted of robbery and burglary, and he has 2 strikes as well, so he's a 3-striker. So he will go away for a long period of time. This case would not have been prosecutable, according to the other elder abuse attorney assigned, Ken Fernandez, but for the fact that that investigator did that follow-up investigation. So that's the type of things we've been able to do because we are a part of this team.
Thank you, Mark. Next in line is Tony Greer, Detective of Riverside County Sheriff's Department, Hemet Station. Detective Tony Greer is a 21-year veteran of the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, where he has served the past 12 years as a detective at the Hemet Station, specializing in economic crime and elder abuse cases. He is an 8-year member of the Sheriff's Posse and a 3-year member of the Sheriff's Peer Support Program. He has received the Sheriff's Department's Medal of Valor in 1989 and is a founding member of the CARE Elder Abuse Team. Tony has led nearly 100 elder abuse educational seminars and trainings across Riverside County, including over 25 elder abuse trainings to law enforcement agencies. He is a technical advisor to other law enforcement jurisdictions about elder abuse law. Tony?
Thank you. One thing I want to emphasize tonight is the thing you're going to hear from all of our panel members is how the team concept works. And through Margot, and thank God for Margot because she's the one that's kept this team together so long and so well. When you can go to a team and sit in a room with 30 or 40 people and have somebody present a case, and if you can get a cop to get up and go out with a social worker and investigate a case right there, something must be working right. And that's what we do constantly. We continually go from the meetings to investigate the crimes. Some of the things I want to talk to you about tonight is I want to point out some of the things for your viewers to look for. We've talked about how this is a very unreported crime, and it is. The victims of this generation are very proud and very embarrassed. We got to be realistic. This generation that we're talking about, and I mean no disrespect when I refer to this generation, because we got to be realistic. This generation that we're talking about made this country great. That's undeniable. My generation kind of messed it up a little bit, and hopefully my kids will fix it. No, that ain't gonna happen, never mind. But anyway, they're very proud, and I want to point out some of the things that you can look for. Like Margot mentioned earlier, the team concept works so well that when we go out and do seminars, we go out in a group. And when you can put an FBI agent, a financial institution like Kathy Roney, law enforcement, the care team, APS in front of a room of 80 seniors and basically tell them, this is what you've got to look for, I think it has improved our reporting a lot. The thing that you've got to realize is the perpetrators of this crime can range from a grandson, a son, a daughter, a neighbor that's the same age. I mean, we've prosecuted seniors that are eligible to be victims. A total stranger. Margot and I have worked cases to where a gentleman met a woman in the parking lot of Sears in Hemet on a Tuesday, and on Thursday they had plans to get married. Friday, she had taken him to his multi-million-dollar home down at the beach and served his tenants with eviction notice. And this is how fast this happens with this. Some of the things that you need to be aware of is, if you've got a neighbor, the generation of these people are very friendly. And, they used to do things with a handshake. And if somebody said, I'm going to do this for you, they did it. And that's the way they're still living. And that's part of the seminars is we're trying to explain to them that that's not the way the world is anymore. So, if you've got a neighbor that has somebody new in their life, whether it's their son or their daughter or a total stranger, these people, they'll get up and they get up early in the morning. Their property's usually immaculate. They get up, they get dressed, and they go on with their day. Some of the things that you're going to notice when elder abuse starts is going to be in isolation. What the perpetrator will do is they will move in with the victim, or they will come see the victim daily. And they'll start isolating them. If you go to visit your neighbor and all of a sudden this strange person says, well, you know what? She's asleep or she doesn't feel well. Can you come back later? And you keep coming back and you keep getting the same story. That's a red flag. You're going to see the fact that their residence is going to go downhill. That's another red flag. What they're doing is they're intercepting mail. They're intercepting phone calls from family members, from loved ones, from neighbors. And then they're going back to the victim and they're telling the victim that, see, nobody cares for you. Nobody's calling you. Nobody's coming to see you. I'm the one that's taking care of you. I cook for you. I clean for you. I do everything for you. Oh, by the way, in order for me to drive your car, you have to put me on the title. And then they get this isolation. And if you're told something long enough, you're going to start to believe it. And that's where they start getting into their bank accounts and they start getting into their life savings. I mean, let's be realistic. An 80-year-old man or woman would have a hard time replacing $60,000 or $70,000 because they can't return to the workforce. And, it happens very quick. And within law enforcement, Sheriff Doyle has just come out, and there's a new bulletin board down in Cathedral City. Sheriff Doyle has announced that we have zero tolerance for the Sheriff's Department as far as elder abuse goes. He's come out with an operations plan. So Sheriff Doyle realizes and sees the severity of this. You had mentioned earlier that, Riverside and San Bernardino County have a lot of elder abuse. I'm here to tell you this is nationwide. This is not just California, it's nationwide. We work with a retired detective from LAPD named Chayo Reyes, who is the guru of elder abuse, and he speaks nationally on elder abuse. So it's not just here. And like Mark said, one of our biggest fears is when the money runs out, they're going to kill the victim. I worked a case in Hemet that involved $480,000. It was an 85-year-old woman and a 35-year-old man. They were going to get married. And this was back in 96. So elder abuse was relatively new to us. And, to be quite honest, law enforcement went out. They didn't recognize it. They went out a second time. And fortunately, the officer that went out realized that maybe they need to contact the care team. The care team gets involved. We start doing a background without the suspect knowing that we're doing, realizing that he's proposing marriage. We start checking bank accounts. He's transferred $100,000 from Hemet to Florida. There's 5 different banking institutions involved in this one case. He's transferring money from every account. I interviewed probably 3 or 4 tellers at every bank. Every teller told me that they suspected that this perpetrator was stealing from our victim, but they were afraid to report it because of confidentiality to their client. Once we got involved, we got a search warrant. We got an arrest warrant. We booked the subject into jail. We did a search of his house. We found that our victim, when Margot and I recovered the victim from the suspect, she couldn't sit. She was in a fetal position in a rocking chair. We couldn't interview her for 2 weeks, but we knew we had an elder abuse case. Working with the DA and the DA investigators, we get a direction, and this is the team concept again. If you work as a team, you know what everybody needs. So we all go off in different directions. Come to find out, we recovered all of her $480,000 with the exception of $30,000 that he had sent to a Swiss bank account. Also in our investigation, we checked pharmacies. What these perpetrators will do is they'll pharmacy and they'll doctor shop. Our victim had a heart problem. When we were finally able to interview her, her biggest complaint about the perpetrator, who she still at this time, sitting face to face with me, and I was telling her exactly what he was doing, she still trusted him because he earned that position of trust with her. And the isolation. They lived next door to another elderly woman. He actually bought a German Shepherd, locked the gates, and locked her in the house. She had fallen 3 times. The ambulance had come out. Finally, we get her medical records and find out that she's a heart patient. Her biggest complaint was that his coffee that he made for her every morning was bitter. Well, come to find out later, and unfortunately, it was too late for blood work on our victim, but like Mark said, a lot of times they kill our victims. What he was doing was he was taking her nitro pills, putting them in her coffee, and then giving her her nitro pills with her coffee. That's why she was falling and getting hurt, because she was so overdrugged. But what we ask as law enforcement, obviously we can't be everywhere. And when we do seminars, the seniors that come to seminars are able to come. What we're asking, and we're asking your viewers, watch out for your neighbor. Go back to your part of this generation to where I guess they call it busybody or nosy or whatever. Take a pie next door, take a cake next door. Stay involved with your neighbors, especially if you live in a community of seniors. Watch for these red flags, because once that money's gone, it's hard for myself or for Mark to recover it, because they spend it, they buy dope with it, they ship it off to other countries, and it's gone. We're asking you to be our eyes and ears so that we can recover the money. The care team, like Margot said earlier, we've recovered a lot of money. We had another case in Hemet that involved almost $5 million of just a caregiver that got greedy. That's where we get them, was when they get greedy, because this victim was going to leave her everything, her house, her car, everything in her house, but she got greedy and started moving funds out of accounts. And then we got involved, the district attorney got involved, a public guardian got involved, and fortunately in this case, and I say fortunately because our main goal is to maintain the integrity of the senior. A lot of people think that we want to come in and take them out and take them away from their home. That's the farthest thing that we want to do. We want to maintain their dignity, and we want to maintain them in their home. Fortunately or unfortunately, in this case, we got involved quick enough to where we didn't have enough to prosecute the suspect, but we saved all of her money. So, it's kind of a catch-22 situation, but when you weigh the whole situation out, she's better off that we got involved earlier and returned her money. So what I'm asking you and your viewers from a law enforcement standpoint, watch out for your neighbor. Don't be afraid to report what you think is elder abuse. I would much rather have a deputy or an officer come out and have it be unfounded than to wait 2 weeks and have it all gone. The $480,000 case that we worked was a matter of a month, and all of her assets were already moved and tied up. Fortunately, we recovered it. And he had also 3 other victims in line, to where at one of their houses we recovered $68,000 in cash stuffed underneath a cabinet in the kitchen of a mobile home. So what I'm asking you is please help us help the seniors of the community of Riverside County, because we need your help. I'm not embarrassed or afraid to ask for your help, because we need it. Because our main goal on the care team is to protect the seniors of Riverside County. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Next is Michelle Haddock. Michelle is with the Riverside County Department of Social Services, where she is a social service supervisor for the Adult Protective Services in-home supportive services programs. Michelle has been in public service for 14 years with assignments in welfare fraud investigations, child protective services, and adult protective services. She currently supervises 12 social workers in the Desert APS office. Michelle is an aggressive advocate for seniors and constantly looks for new ways to improve the system through partnership and communication. She often provides training and support for those agencies that interact with adult protective services, believing that knowledge is a powerful tool toward the prevention and eradication of elder abuse in Riverside County. Michelle?
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm sitting amongst great partners, partners in elder abuse, so I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to eradicate it, but we're putting a dent in it anyway. I'm going to explain a little bit about adult protective services, and I think sometimes there's some misconceptions about what we can and we cannot do, so I'll try to touch on some of those topics and then maybe talk a little bit about a couple cases. I am very fascinated with the success that we've shown here in Riverside County. I'm so proud of the DA's office about the conservatorship cases, and as a whole, our reporting is actually up. Specifically, I can tell you about the Coachella Valley, because I actually supervise the valley here. And when I started, I was actually a field worker about 10 years. So actually, I've been around this public service business a little bit longer than 14 years, but I won't tell you how long. You'll know how old I am. But basically, when I started working cases here in the desert, we managed to, in this particular district, Coachella Valley, receive about 600 reports in a year. And the numbers I have from July through April, from July of 2002 through April of this year, we had 1,084 cases of reported elder abuse here in just the Coachella Valley, and about close to 400 cases of the dependent adult population. And when I say dependent adult, I'm meaning someone who's 18 to 64, whose daily activities are actually affected either by a mental or physical disability. Our elders, in terms of what Adult Protective Services is actually receiving reports and investigating, is defined as someone 65 years or older. So as you can see, from 600 cases to now basically close to 1,400 and some, the reporting is actually up. And that's, I think, a big, my hat's off to Margot. I haven't met a person that works any harder, ever. In terms of education, in terms of actually having the multidisciplinary team, the care team, and our agencies working together, I think we're seeing a far better response. Presently, we also, I would say, also provide some prevention services, and that's due to some legislation. Elder abuse statutes are relatively new in the country. There isn't even a federal piece of legislation, a federal bill that's comprehensive in terms of elder abuse. In California, in the mid-'80s, we had some basic elder abuse statutes, which Mark is using and prosecuting folks, has been updated, and we're seeing a lot more legislation, and we're happy that the folks that are working with us in elder abuse are understanding some of the needs in terms of like the evidence code and things. In terms of what we do, our hotline staff, social workers, and just like child protection, receives calls from the community. Anybody who is mandated is someone who basically works in the arena, either health or social service or law enforcement, around a senior or dependent adult. And by law, when I say mandated, that means that they're ordered to make a report if they have a reasonable suspicion that someone's being abused or abusing themselves. When those calls come in, they're assigned to someone. They go out and they investigate whatever the allegations are, whether it's financial neglect, self-neglect, isolation, abandonment, and mental suffering. We talked about psychological. And basically, if there's a suspicion that there's a violation of law, of a penal code, that there's somewhat of a reasonable suspicion of a crime, we're mandated to cross-report that to law enforcement. So I'm not going to touch too much on financial abuse because I have Kathy sitting next to me, so I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that. But I'll talk about in terms of what happens in terms of those calls. When the calls come into we have a central intake. About 6,200 calls came in that time frame I reported, July through last April. So thousands of calls are coming in. Some of the information we receive is people are asking for assistance. They maybe need a referral to some other agency, and we provide that service. If it's an actual report of suspected abuse, it's sent out to whatever the district office covers for Riverside County, and we are a big county, as everyone is aware. So it's sent to a district office, and there's district offices throughout the county. I happen to be here in Cathedral City. I'm close to the billboard, I'm happy to say. And we're actually quite busy in all parts of the county. I think our demographics and what's happening here in our valley, which may be different than, let's say, somebody in Moreno Valley or some other parts of the county, is we have a high population, as was mentioned earlier by Joseph, of folks that are in that 85-plus group. And in the cities around here, our actual growing population in the mid-80s is really increasing, which means we have more potential victims. So as we're talking about in terms of recognizing folks, what Tony mentioned, new best friends, or the love angles, are sometimes a reasonable suspicion for someone to call in. The cases tend to have patterns. They really do. They have patterns. And sometimes people believe there isn't anyone out there, that there isn't anyone out there to care for the senior. So it appears that everything looks on the up and up when somebody who's very friendly gets involved. And we have to understand elder abusers come in all shapes, sizes, and forms, just like our victims. And sometimes it's difficult because, again, our victims don't understand their victims. Certainly we have something that's quite unique, and that is when the calls are coming into a social worker, one of the first areas of concern is whether this person has capacity, what we consider capacity. Do we have an undiagnosed? Do we have a diagnosis? We have a lot of folks who now are living longer, and we're faced with some of the issues in terms of whether someone has a dementia. Some of the studies are now showing that someone over the 85 range, it's a much more likely case that there is going to be some kind of cognitive impairment. And that certainly makes folks more susceptible. People have short-term memory loss. If let's say they have visual problems and they have to rely on somebody to help them, if they're filling out or they're just signing a check for someone, whether that's family, caregiver, neighbor, they're relying on and they're trusting someone that they're not going to take advantage of that situation. So those kind of cases are actually making our folks more vulnerable because they are certainly isolated many times just by their physical impairment or by loss. They've lost a lot of people in their life. And we tend to see groups of folks that are the most likely to become victims, and there's like three basic categories. You have those folks who are very dependent. So they're basically either physically or emotionally dependent upon someone, whether that's a family member, let's say it's a caregiver, it's a son, daughter, whoever, or maybe emotionally dependent. They've lost someone, they've lost a spouse, they've lost some family members, and they're emotionally dependent upon someone. Then you have another group, and that's what we call the slipping client. It might be someone who doesn't have a diagnosis, but maybe actually having some actual physical problems, may not go to a doctor. The examples are they may call law enforcement because they'll say somebody stole my car, or something happened to my checkbook, or someone broke in my home and took something. And sometimes they're finding a way to rationalize that there are these deficits and they're trying to account for things. So we'll see reports come in, the cars may be located at another location and things like that. The slipping client, someone who has some cognitive problems, in a Virginia study makes up for about 70% of financial abuse cases. A lot of times victims, our elders basically have something going on, and then they're certainly more easily preyed on. And then the other category is really the person who is bereaved, who has suffered a recent loss. And that's where we see a lot of the new friends or the new family or the person who just showed up from somewhere out of town that is a long-lost relative. And the bereaved group are particularly vulnerable because they're dealing with those losses. And many times, whether it was the husband or the wife, the person who was managing the financial affairs, if there's a change there and they lost that spouse, they're particularly vulnerable because they may hand over the responsibility to the wrong person. And we'll see where somebody will just meet someone, they'll have the loss, and then they'll meet somebody in their complex, somebody from their church will want to help them, and they'll put that trust and they'll give them access immediately to managing their money, and that can be a dangerous thing. I'm going to talk about a couple cases, and I'm going to let Kathy cover a lot of the financial abuse, which I would say here in our valley is particularly high. Many times, and the difference too in terms of child abuse, and you see the different categories of abuse, ours, like Mark mentioned, they tend to overlap. So in other words, if somebody is got theft, if their motive is theft, they'll use these other means. They'll use physical abuse, sometimes sexual abuse, sometimes the emotional abuse. They'll use those things to help perpetrate that crime. And so we're always watching, and we're asking for you all to take note of your own families, take note of your neighbors and your friends, because we really need you to help us so we can help you. But I'm going to talk about a couple cases, and then hopefully that'll cover, and if there's some questions later, be happy to answer them. There's a gentleman who, through our care team, we actually worked because it was a very complex issue. The gentleman was a Palm Springs resident, and he had put some trust in a couple of gentlemen to help manage him. And he actually had a diagnosis, and he had some impairment, and he was confused, and he had memory problems. And these guys got involved with him, and they wanted to help him take care of the money. And he had been a very frugal man and had invested, and so they helped him invest in some of these in real estate, and they helped themselves to a lot of his money. One of the things that happened, though, that it's becoming more complex, is that he owned a piece of property in Guadalajara. And so we found that an APS report was called in, and a social worker went out to try to find his residence, and he wasn't there. So there was a call from a gentleman who said, well, I'm a nephew, and I can handle things, and everything's under control. And he doesn't really need anything, and he's not coming back. He's doing his thing. So that case basically was closed. And then later, some allegations, he ended up somehow in Orange County. He had gotten actually on a plane, left Guadalajara, got away from the caregivers. He was staying in his own home down in Guadalajara, and he was trying to come home back to the desert. And he became so confused when he was in Costa Mesa. He was actually taken in and evaluated on an involuntary hold, that he was he was disabled, and they didn't know what to do with him. He was acting very erratically. And what happened was this gentleman said, well, I'm the nephew, everything's great. And he really wasn't the nephew. So that's another thing. If people tell you things, we want to validate what they say, because he really wasn't the nephew. He was just a man who was interested with a partner in taking his money. But through the care process, it was very interesting. By the care process, in terms of supporting one another in different agencies, we were able to talk to the folks down at the consulate down in Mexico. And they went out, and a detective from here, our Palm Springs Police Department, went down and interviewed him and found him down there. And he was sobbing. He was very depressed. He wanted to come home. And then some arrangements were made, and we were able to bring him home. And when we did that, we were able to file through the public guardian. They're not here, and I want to tell you, the public guardian is a very important piece to all this. The public guardian's office was able to file for conservatorship through the use of our county council in terms of putting him on a probate conservatorship. And then the task became, what can we do about his money? At the time that he came back to California and came back to Coachella Valley, he was down to about $11,000 out of close to how much, Mark? 1.2 million. So a lot of money was gone. And so the issue, and not only, the concern certainly for APS, which has a little bit different perspective, I don't think bad guys should get away, but certainly I'm concerned about the risk to the elder when the transaction and when the money changes and there isn't any more money to use, victims become more at risk, like Tony says. They really do, because they're not necessary any longer. And they also tie someone to the fact that they stole the money. So we're very concerned when those things happen. So fortunately with the conservatorship, he was able to, actually with the help of Mark Mandio and our public guardian's office, there was some time that we were able to recover some of the funds, which is very important. So hopefully that covers. Am I on my time, or am I doing pretty good? You're good. Okay. I'll just give you one more case. Is that good? Okay. Okay. And another case, in terms of what we're hearing about people who suddenly get in the life of someone, the new best friends, we have to be quite wary of that. That's really sometimes a red flag. Or you don't see someone, or there's a pattern of change of lifestyle. Another situation is a gentleman who was living out here, and he lived in a country club, and he actually was doing very well in his 90s. And he met a gal. Well, actually, he had some help. He had a friend who was elderly herself, and then he had a gal who helped him with things like little errands and giving him manicures and things, and she would come to the house. Well, she was very busy. She had her own family, so she introduced her sister to him. And in a matter of about 3 days, the neighbors said they were in love, and he was assisting her to fix her car and a number of other things. Well, the family members, which he did have, came up to visit. And this gal was in her late 40s. And it was true love. She felt it was true love. And what a pattern that happened was he had some serious cognitive deficits. And he had a trust. And he had quite a bit of money in that trust. And the daughter came up to visit and realized there were lots and lots of checks being written to this individual, and became very concerned, and certainly contacted the authorities, talked to the sheriff's department, called into Adult Protective Services. And through the investigation, and it took some time, there was a conservatorship pursued on his behalf. And it took a number of years to actually resolve it, because there was actually a civil case, which will give me a minute to talk about. What Adult Protective Services doesn't have the right to do is to remove someone from the home. So the only process in terms of sometimes protecting folks is through a civil process, the conservatorship process. And again, the public guardian worked very closely as a part of the team, and we were able to place this individual on a conservatorship, which he needed. He actually had probably a vascular dementia. He didn't know he had signed away his home to her in a different name. She had actually driven off and married him when the family became more suspicious and were actually pursuing the conservatorship themselves. So through basically that civil process, we were able to recover quite a bit of money in terms of the agencies. And actually, he actually lived a number of years under the conservatorship and was able to reconnect with his family, which he had been cut off from. And that's one of the things that make us kind of happy, is that we try to reconnect families, and we try to make folks, at least if there's some civil recovery, they can maintain a lifestyle. Because certainly if they're going to need some sort of medical care, assisted living, it's certainly affected by an elder financial crime. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy.
Thank you, Michelle. Kathy Rooney is employed by the Riverside County Credit Union, where she is a security officer and financial fraud investigator. Kathy has 20 years of service in the credit union industry and is the security officer and fraud investigator for Riverside County's credit union. Kathy is a member of the International Association of Financial Crimes Investigators, a board member of the Inland Empire Economic Crime Investigations Association since 1994, and has served on the Credit Union Security Network Leadership Council since 1999. A member of the Riverside County Care Team, which is a multidisciplinary elder abuse task force. Since its inception in 1997, she is involved in the training and development of both economic and elder abuse materials for the care team, law enforcement, and the financial industry, including writing numerous articles on elder abuse and participating in the production of an elder abuse video for Riverside County. She has been a presenter on the topic of financial elder abuse at various seminars and trainings, including law enforcement, adult protective services, California counties councils, California Credit Union League, Western Security Management Conference, financial institutions, as well as numerous community service groups. Kathy was recently recognized by the Riverside County Board of Supervisors for her service to the Riverside County Elder Abuse Care Team and the citizens of Riverside County. Kathy?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You're probably wondering why there's a banker sitting up here with these prestigious people. One of the reasons is financial institutions are a critical component in combating financial elder abuse. It's one of the lacking components still. Financial institutions are just now starting to recognize this as a significant problem within their organizations. I'm going to start off a little bit with a story how I got involved and with financial elder abuse, with a personal story. And my story is not unique because in speaking with other financial institution employees and managers, this is very, very common. We don't get involved. We tend to be creatures of our own business. We don't go out into the community other than to recruit new customers very often. We don't involve ourselves with agencies such as Adult Protective Services. We deal with law enforcement only on an as-need basis, and of course, the District Attorney's Office the same. In the past, I think, number of years, we've seen the interaction with the private sector, with financial institutions starting to recognize the problem and needing to interact with these agencies. One of the critical things that I see frequently is there is a misunderstanding or a lack of knowledge as to what these agencies' mandates are and what they can do for us and what we can do for them. So coming to a team concept like Care Team and being able to provide some background on financial issues, being able to sit as a resource on financial abuse issues, as well as being able to utilize their resources, is an extremely critical component. Back in 1996, I was a branch manager, and my first direct involvement with a financial elder abuse case was when two women showed up at my office door. One of them was an elderly woman, and one of them was that nosy neighbor that Tony spoke of earlier. These nosy neighbors, and we use that term very fondly, are the people that save our elders from a lot of abuse. In this particular instance, the neighbor, who had a very limited contact with the elder customer, had recognized over a period of time that there was an individual appearing at our elder's doorstep on a regular basis and picking up an envelope from under the doormat. And at first it was on a weekly basis, and then it became semi-weekly, and then it became on a daily 1, 2, and 3 times a day. And of course she thought that was rather an unusual thing. And in talking to our elder, our senior member, over the mailbox or picking up the mail, she started questioning her a little bit as to what the situation was. She, at that time, determined that our customer was extremely confused. She didn't really have an understanding of who this person was or really what their point of being there was. In further discussion, she was able to identify that this person was a telemarketer and was victimizing her over and over and over again. And of course, this person was there to pick up a check 1, 2, and 3 times a day. Because this person evidently had some capacity issues, she didn't understand or recognize that she had already put a check out there 1, 2, or 3 times a day. So not knowing what to do, she brought our customer to our branch. At that time, we recognized it as a crime. We called law enforcement, because that's what you do when there's a crime. And law enforcement, again, this is back in '96, not a lot of laws, not a lot of rules, and not very much training at all. We were told, this is an adult, they can do what they want with their money. It's not a crime. We understood that this person, in speaking and interviewing my elder, my senior customer, she did not have the ability to make good, competent financial decisions. I'm not a medical practitioner. I can't make a determination whether or not she has capacity, but I certainly can make a determination based on the average individual if she's making a good, sound financial decision. And in my opinion, she was not capable of doing that. We could have let it go. Obviously, we are there to help our customer. financial institutions as a whole are there, we have an inherent responsibility to protect our members' assets. And that doesn't just mean with vaults and alarms and cameras and so on and so forth. If someone is being victimized, we have an obligation to do something about it. The problem was we didn't know what to do. So literally, because we did not have these associations with these individuals and these entities, we picked up the yellow pages and started flipping through, trying to determine what agency we could call. Literally coming across Public Guardian, Public Guards the Public, this must be the person we talk to. And that started the process. A happy ending to this story was that the individual, and also going back a little bit, our senior customer, when we started interviewing and looking at the transactions, which actually had started occurring 3 months prior on a limited basis and then progressively increasing in frequency. In talking to the tellers that were doing transactions face-to-face, again, like Tony stated earlier, it's very frequent that the tellers will recognize the first signs of elder or any type of financial abuse, but they don't know what to do about it, and they don't know how to report it. So in many, many cases, it just goes unreported. That was the case in this situation. And talking to our tellers, they had determined that this individual, not only had she had this financial abuse, her physical person had diminished. She was getting more and more confused. A woman that was very well-dressed and well-groomed on a regular basis suddenly became disheveled looking on her as the time went by. So again, that came out after the fact. But happy ending is, as a result of the intervention, Public Guardian was able to step in, APS was instrumental, and they were able to take control of her with a conservatorship, take control of assets and of her person. And not only did this individual have financial abuse issues, she was also self-neglecting, and that was the cause of her physical diminishing. So they were able to intervene there, and as a result, she's very healthy to this day, and we still see her as a regular customer. So that's a very happy ending story. But as a result of that, that got me a little interested in how do we do better in the future as a financial institution. What can we do? And then meeting someone like Margot and people that were involved with elder abuse issues, financial elder abuse issues, and then the development of the care team itself. We were asked to come to the table, and it's been, I think, a very successful partnership. Banks as a whole, and I'm using banks in a generic term, this is credit unions, banks, financial institutions as a whole, basically in the past have chosen not to get involved in the affairs of their customers because of privacy concerns and so on. That's changing slowly. I think there's again, and it's through the efforts of teams like the care team and other FAST teams out in the communities that we're seeing an increase in the education. The population is aging, and I think there's a statistic that says the persons over the age of 50 right now control over 70% of the personal net worth in U.S. households today. That's a significant figure of dollars. Banks have to recognize that their customer base is aging as well, and we need to start addressing their needs and their vulnerabilities, and also incorporating ways to protect them from those that really see them as an easy target. And that's what we're starting to see, is an increase in crimes going after the elder. Because let's face it, people my age don't have a lot of money. We live on credit. The senior population has lived conservatively. They have the net wealth. And so the crooks don't take long to figure out that that's where the money is and that's where the targets are. Financial abuse can range from anything from a simple credit card charge, a single check theft, literally to the total liquidation of someone's assets, their life savings. We've seen it repeatedly, and the unfortunate part is we've heard some really good success stories here, but I think the reality is when the money's gone, it's very seldom recoverable. It's extremely difficult to get it back. And as Mark was saying earlier, we see the effects it has. We see these individuals on a regular basis, and when they're victimized, it does affect their entire life. It affects their physical and emotional person. Frontline banking staff is our front line of defense. These are the individuals, our tellers, who see the first signs of financial elder abuse on a regular basis. They know their customer. They talk to them. They know their lives. And they are the ones that should receive the most training in these areas. Unfortunately, banks have not given that training in the past. We're starting to see some grassroots movement to provide adequate training to frontline teller staff. Our senior customers really are creatures of habit, like we all become as we get older. They tend to have very regular banking habits. They perform repetitive transactions. So when they start incurring more debt as they get older, that's unusual. We have to train our other staff, our lending staff. We have to train other components in the industry as well to recognize signs of financial elder abuse. For instance, it would be really uncommon for an 85-year-old woman to come in and purchase a 2004 dually truck. And that's something that should be questioned when a loan application is turned in by an 85 or 84-year-old woman. There needs to be some interaction and discussion, some questioning, not because we are, make a decision based on that, but there should be a genuine concern as to what they're doing and why they're doing it. If there's a gradual or significant change in their regular patterns of banking, with more frequent withdrawals, breaking certificates, taking penalties, any of the things that would be irregular to their regular pattern of business, that should be a red flag. It should be a concern to the individual that's performing the transaction. If someone starts accompanying them that's never accompanied them before, it should be a red flag, especially if that person is taking control of the transaction. And frequently, we see that in the industry where an individual will start accompanying them, that new friend, and will actually be the one performing the transaction, speaking for our senior customer. We haven't really talked a lot about an undue influence, but that's a huge issue in financial abuse, where that person is being coerced or unduly influenced to perform these transactions because they feel they have an obligation to the individual for some reason. Maybe it's just for the companionship. Unfortunately, a lot of times financial abuse is recognized in the financial institution, but it doesn't go it goes unreported, and that can be for a variety of reasons. Most of the time, again, there's this issue of consumer privacy. We don't want to invade our customers' privacy or their business by asking questions or reporting suspected abuse. Not the tellers themselves or the employees themselves, even management level employees, don't know what to do about it. I will tell you, back in that original case that I was just speaking of back in 1996, when I called our counsel, our private counsel, and said, what do I do? I have this issue and nobody seems to want to take it. What do we do? And I was told by our counsel at that time, don't get involved. It's none of our business. But again, we have an inherent responsibility to protect assets. Many bank employees are frustrated because they don't have a lot of recourse, especially when they see these types of victimization going on. So one of the things we really want to do is go out there, and it's through the efforts of the CARE program in getting these banker trainings put together and having law enforcement come and talk to individuals and having relationship and partnerships in the community like APS to come and have them come and talk to our employees and our staffs to have them understand what the problem is. The average age of a teller these days is probably 21, 22 years old, and that might be old. They don't have a lot of life experience, so they don't necessarily see and understand some of the things and recognize some of these issues. So training becomes a critical component, and the CARE Teams Bankers Training Program is a critical component in getting into the banks and getting to the frontline staff. Unfortunately, a lot of bank training goes to management level staff. It's the frontline staff that needs to receive this training because they're the ones in the trenches seeing the abuse occurring on a daily basis. In addition, what we've seen is law enforcement is now mandated to have training, and there's more of an understanding, I believe, in understanding what financial elder abuse is and being able to get response from law enforcement now. So there's a good partnership. One of the stories I have with Tony, for instance, we had a situation out in his area where I had a financial consultant that was in our office call me and said, I have somebody I believe that's going to be lose I think it was $85,000. and they're ready to sign it over, and I'm really concerned, what do I do? And I was able to call Tony, and he actually went out the same day and interviewed our senior and was able to stop the transaction. So again, that's the type of partnership that the care team can make a really big difference with. One of the other things when you talk about bankers, and I talked about the story earlier, is we were only talking about financial abuse, and we talked a little bit about being able to intervene on a physical nature. In the last month or two, I've actually received 2 different cases that have started with a financial abuse component, but ultimately ended with the senior calling because they had run out of money, had no funds available to them, and were literally telling my staff that they had no food and they had no water, and in one case had no electricity. Again, we're the ones that are receiving this information. What do we do with the information? We're compelled to report that. That's an abuse. It's a life-threatening situation. In one of those instances, I actually made a call to Michelle Haddock and said we had previously reported the financial abuse, but now it's escalated to a possible life-threatening situation, and we were able to get some intervention at that point. So again, the partnering between financial institutions becomes critical, not only from the financial abuse issues, but can also become critical in recognizing the changes in these individuals on a gradual or day-to-day basis. I want to talk just a little bit about, well, first of all, financial institutions are starting to understand that they have that they're legally protected to report these. That's been the biggest hurdle we've dealt with on an ongoing basis over the last number of years, is convincing financial institutions that they can report suspected abuse without fear of any type of litigation for divulging privacy issues. Ongoing training is required. Bankers love to have everything in writing. They want it nicely blocked out in bold print. And unfortunately, there is no one set law that says bankers can do X, Y, and Z, and they're fully protected. These are covered under many different components of different regs under the probate code, welfare and institution code, and government codes. So there's little bits and pieces in each of these codes that have statements that protect financial institutions in reporting. We are not mandated reporters, although there can be an argument for pro or con, but again, we are the ones that see the financial abuse on first and foremost. So one of these days you may see that occur. I want to talk a little bit directly to the audience as far as what's occurring, what we're seeing occurring out right now, especially we're seeing a lot of it. I know Mark deals with this on a day-to-day basis, Tony deals with it, and so does everyone on the panel here. But what we've seen is kind of the transition from the hit and run crook that goes and steals the checkbook, the ATM card, the credit cards, and runs them up, to using legitimate means to rob our seniors. And they're using our own tools, our own banking financial tools to do it. They're doing it legitimately to have illegitimate means at the end of it. They're using things such as beneficiary change forms. They're getting into our seniors' lives, and they're convincing them to change their beneficiaries to themselves because they're the ones that are there. They're the ones that are helping them. There's no one else there for them, and as a result or reward for their friendship, they should be given everything should the senior die. Joint ownership is a very, very crucial thing that we're seeing as far as they're getting into accounts. They're convincing seniors to put them onto existing accounts. And one of the things that I think frequently isn't explained or it's not understood is that once somebody is put on and placed onto a joint ownership account, they're 100% owner of the funds, whether they've really contributed or not, in accordance to the rule of joint ownership. Now, civilly, they may be able to dispute that, but if they walk into the financial institution, that other individual can withdraw the funds without question. So again, they're finding ways to get to the money legitimately and legally. Living trust accounts. These things are a wonderful tool, but unfortunately, we're seeing seniors change them with new people enter into their lives. They do them at a time, usually in younger years, and they set out their financial plan. And unfortunately, these people can convince them to change either the trustee and make them trustee to the funds, or they will put them on as beneficiaries to the estates when it's said and done. And of course, the ultimate tool and weapon is the power of attorney, the power of attorney form. We see it abused on a regular basis. We recently had a case that we referred to Public Guardian that had a niece bring in a power of attorney on one of our elderly customers, and with a whole bunch of legal paperwork. And this was to encumber her home that was free and clear. They were going to take a first trust deed out on it for a significant amount of funds. And it was actually to pay off medical bills for the senior. And there's many different ways that that can be avoided from encumbering your home. So that kind of raised a red flag. So we looked at it, and we were able to actually work with one of our civil attorneys that assists the care team that deals in elder financial abuse, and help decipher some of the legal, and actually made a determination that not only was this niece taken off a temporary conservatorship previously by Public Guardian, we had also shut her down once before in our own financial institution for financial elder abuse. So she was just making it, unfortunately, these people are repetitive offenders. Quitclaim deeds are another issue that we see frequently coming through now, that where seniors will sign over their house, their title, very, very freely. So again, they're using these documents, these tools that are legitimate to get to the funds. Just speaking to the seniors briefly, never allow someone to convince you to make a major financial decision without discussing it first with your family members, a close friend, a relative, clergy, somebody that you are confident and comfortable with. No matter how urgent the individual makes it sound that you need to do this, you need to take the time to research it and make a good, sound financial decision. We see frequently that people are coerced into making quick decisions, and then the funds are gone. If you're unclear as what is being asked of you to do, take the time to go to your financial institution and ask to speak with someone and have them clarify what the relationship is, what the ramifications of that relationship is as far as the financial relationship. If changes are made to your financial accounts, which may be done very legitimately, limit the scope of what that person can do. You don't necessarily have to give them full access to everything you have. You can set up, if you have accounts that have your money market, your savings, all your certificates, and your checking attached to it, and they all have overdraft protection, you don't have to give someone full access. You can set up an individual account that just you and that individual have access to with a certain specified amount of funds. You don't have to put them on just that account. You can establish a new relationship, and that's very important. Frequently, we see that occur where they'll just put them on the joint account and not think about the fact that they can basically access and tap all of the funds. So if you are thinking about entering into a relationship where you have a caregiver situation or a need to have someone help you with your finances, establish a secondary account where only you and that individual have access to a fixed amount of funds. If you are going to use a power of attorney, use it wisely. It can be a great tool, but it can also be very devastating. And one of the things I think that is frequently misunderstood is there's many different types of powers of attorney. You can grant many different types of power. Financial institutions have powers of attorney that you can grant just on a specific account, so that that individual can only have power on that one account. Frequently, people go down to the local stationery store and get one of the general powers of attorney and sign it, giving that individual unlimited access to everything, to be able to make financial decisions, medical decisions, transfer properties, and so on. Again, understanding the tool that you're signing is extremely important. There's such things as springing powers of attorney, where only in the event of a medical incapacity or incapacity does the power of attorney go into effect. So while you're of sound mind and body, you can handle your own financial affairs, but it would only come into effect once it's been certified that you have incapacity. And finally, just a parting thought is that you've worked hard all your life. You've worked hard to save that money. You've worked hard to put the nest egg away for a good life and a nice life, a retirement. Don't let someone come into your life. Don't let someone come in and convince you with a single signature to give it all away. And we really urge people to take the time and to watch out for their neighbors, to watch out for their family and friends, and look for those warning signs, and look for those individuals that are now suddenly coming into their lives. We encourage financial institutions to step up and start training their employees. We encourage employees to start stepping up and recognizing and reporting. So with that, I will turn it over.
Well, thank you very much. Well, we'll kick it up a notch with our next guest, a man who needs no introduction, Marshall Gilbert.
Thank you. First of all, I'm not part of the CARE team. I got a call many years ago from a relatively new group at the time called CARE. Juan DeLara called me up and said, I want to come in with the deputy DA and talk about elder abuse. Well, I have to admit, I was a little bit stunned. I mean, we were always taught to respect our elders and call them sir or Mr. and Mrs. or ma'am. So I really thought this is a minor problem, but at the particular time I needed some good karma, so I said, come on down. And to say that I was stunned was the understatement of a century. Juan DeLara came down with a pit bull terrier by the name of District Attorney Greenberg, and he is awesome. I mean, he's an awesome guy. I don't know if he was assigned to that, but he came down to speak about it. Nobody gets anything past him. And I got educated. In the show that we did, I was originally going to give them 20 minutes. They were there 2.5 hours. We had, in one show, speaking and resolved it off the air. 2 people called in, 1 person living on fixed income Social Security, not a penny more, and a man who lived at the Vintage, one of the wealthiest communities out here, both petrified because they're being abused, both financially, both physically. They resolved it and got caseworkers out there immediately following the show. But imagine the conflict of a parent whose child is abusing them. We're all parents, or most of us are parents. What's worse, having your money ripped off or sending a child to jail? They have this conflict. And they don't know what to do. They don't want to be victimized any further, but they don't want to see their child go to jail. Fortunately, the laws are such that you don't need the victim's permission to prosecute. And I'm sure the law enforcement will get into that later. But that's the conflict that these victims face. I can give you some examples of how awful it is from personal experience. You know, I would say just because someone has been ripped off or abused before, they are not more likely or less likely to have it done to them again, just the same. They're very trusting, which was said earlier. Shortly after that interview, there was a gentleman going around town ripping seniors off, literally putting them on the street. Did what was said, quit claim the property, so that people had nowhere to go. They called me. We were able to get the guy arrested with somebody wearing a wire. It is the trust, which was mentioned earlier, is amazing. My father-in-law, my own father-in-law, let me tell you how these people is not a good description. One of their big scams is they'll go to a big fancy high-end hotel, hold seminars. And then they'll sell them. One of the big scams going is this one particular, and I see them in the paper all the time, was storage houses. My father-in-law was an exceptional businessman, but from that trusting generation that was mentioned several times here, invested $300,000 based on the premise that, hey, they're at a fancy hotel, they have a big name, and they must be honest. For his investment, he got 4 shares of these storage houses. Well, what happens is they file bankruptcy, a perfectly legal act. Then that group splits up. Now currently, at this one place, all within the law, we've tried to get people involved in the law, but it can't be done. One half of that group is now running the bankruptcy, and the other half are the managers of the different storage houses. This is, as was said by this lady, within the law. So this is how they work. These people are parasites. And people are ashamed. Shame is very big here. Very big. They don't want to report it. They don't tell their friends about it. Sometimes, as in my father-in-law's case, he didn't even tell his wife about it. She never knew. He took it out of his pension plan. Well, needless to say, he found out the bankruptcy notices came in one after another, and then the two groups fighting amongst each other called in and said, they're going to steal all your money. No, there. 6 months later, he was dead, a healthy man. He wasn't going to bankrupt him, but he was so devastated, so ashamed, so fearful that he was dead. My own father-in-law, somebody who I'm in the public eye, speak to thousands of people every day, couldn't even come to me and say, hey, you know people, can you help? See, that's their button. That is what the people count on. They count on shame, intimidation, fear. As we know, pretty much all violence is perpetrated sometimes in non-physical ways. I'm 6'3", about 180 pounds, no, a little bit heavier than that. But imagine me going to my late mother, who's 5 feet, 100 pounds soaking wet, saying, you'll write me a check in a deep tone. That's elder abuse. I didn't touch her, but clearly my intent would be to intimidate her. Hard to prove in court. My mother doesn't want to put me in jail. And we have a problem. We get calls all the time, different scams, different people, same MO, where we all have to be vigilant. If you're a senior, unfortunately, the trusting of a shake of a hand is obsolete. You trust no one. For what you're investing tens of thousands of dollars, it's always best to get an independent financial advisor. Get somebody to protect your interest. Don't trust anybody. One of the big problems they face that we learned on the radio is after they've been ripped off 5, 6 times, they still trust the guy who's ripped them off. How do you deal with that? You need a team like this to come in, get them protected, and explain how they really are ripping them off. See, the fear of loneliness, the fear of isolation. Their kids live off in Jersey or Florida, and they're alone. They put this guy in jail, they'll have no friend anymore. This is so many layers of complication, so many layers of shame, fear, intimidation. The sexual abuse that was brought up earlier of the elderly, again, that's a criminal act. The sexual abuse is an act of violence, not sex. It is a way to take power, to intimidate, and to get what belongs to them. They work in teams, they work alone. And I'm going to be brief because these are the experts, and I'm just going to share one more story of a family member, elderly family member, where someone had ripped him off, went to jail on the fraud charges. Same man comes out of jail, explains how it was the cops who put him out. Everybody would have made their money back if the cops didn't interfere, and said he was going to give him his money back, and did give him his money back, $10,000. Then came to him, see, I made good. Now I got a real investment, a $100,000 investment. He called me up this time. And I called the police. I got involved. I wore a wire. The guy's back in jail where he belongs. But my father-in-law, who I'm speaking of has passed away, was willing to do it again with somebody else. Not because he's dumb, he was a wealthy man. Because it's been ingrained in their brains to trust. He reestablished his trust by giving him his money back. He said, well, that must be. Why would he come back here and give me their money back? So this is what these people have to deal with. It's not cut and dry. There's no one formula. If there's a way for somebody to get some money through elder abuse, they'll get it. People who are violent. They'll be violent. I think that if you see a black eye on an elderly or any sort of physical trauma, err on the side of caution. Call these people. If it's nothing, it'll work itself out. If you see multiple injuries, call them. If it's nothing, they'll work it out. Err on the side of caution. I could go on for 2 days, tell you horror story after horror story that I've heard on the air for 8 years. I'm going to tell one more story and I'll be done in less than 5 minutes with my whole spiel. I have a birthday gag on the radio. And every year I ask for a birthday present. 1 year it was a Rolls-Royce convertible valued at $400,000. 1 year it was a helicopter. 1 year I decided, let's make the joke a Porsche. 70-year-old woman living in Morningside called me up, told me to come pick up my Porsche. I had to convince her that it was a gag and I didn't need it. I had to convince her. I had to go there with my wife, with my children, and say, we really thank you, it's really sweet. Please don't give me the Porsche. But because I'm on the radio, they trust me. So I don't think we have to really worry about elder abuser talk show hosts. However, if they hear an ad on a radio show of mine, they're going to believe that ad. Not necessarily because it's anything other than the fact that it's on my show. So I have to be vigilant to make sure any sponsor I accept during my time is honest, ethical, and above board. It is something that we all have to be involved in because these are the people that took care of us. These are the people that raised us. These are the people that cared for us when we were unable to take care of ourselves. The world's a circle. Now it's our job to take care of them, and not just our own mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and uncles. It is everybody's responsibility. This is, like said earlier, this is the greatest generation. Absolutely. Some of them fought in a world war, but they all fought for us. And now sometimes we have to risk alienation. Sometimes you get involved, you'll alienate yourself. You got to take that risk. They can't earn it again. And I think I went over my 5 minutes, but thank you very much.
Okay, before we open it up to questions, is there a phone number, Margot, that we can give to our viewing audience?
Yes, there are actually a couple of phone numbers. To call Adult Protective Services, there's an 800 number. It's a 24-hour number, but we would like you to ask you to use the number if you call after 5:30 in the evening to reserve those calls for emergency calls. And call if you have non-emergency type calls to call during the regular hours. Anyway, the number is 1-800-791-4123. So let me repeat that. It's 1-800-791-4123. And then if you want to reach the CARE program staff, if you have consumer fraud problems or you need some help along that line, you can call our Indio office, and the number there is 863-7661, and you can talk to Wanda Lara, who is the coordinator for the CARE program in Indio, or his assistant, Jerry Richardson. So those are at least, and of course your local law enforcement, which those numbers you each have, as well as the district attorney's office.
Okay, we'll ask you for those numbers again if our viewing audience didn't have a pencil and paper in hand. We'll open up to questions from the commission.
I have a question with regard to, I was going to ask, first of all, Margot, to give information with regard to what we just did with the numbers. But I also have a question with regard to, is there any pending federal legislation that really would affect elder abuse? I know that there's something that's done locally, perhaps, and then it was indicated at the state level. But is there anything federally that's even thought of at this time?
Anybody can jump in and answer these questions.
Michelle, you might be, there are some things happening at the federal level, and they have been begun some time ago, and they are picking up an impetus. Do you know more detail?
Well, I understand there's some Senate hearings, but certainly with budget woes, there's certainly concern for all of us in the service area for elder programs. But my understanding, there's been some Senate hearings, and they're looking into elder financial abuse and even some comprehensive bills about elder abuse. Nothing yet.
I think there's a bill pending before both the House and the Senate right now, and they're talking about funding numerous sorts of programs, educational type programs, programs to assist law enforcement and so forth. I know that in the Senate, I think Orrin Hatch is one of the persons who's promoting the bill, but it's a bipartisan bill, and unfortunately, I don't have more information on that for you right now.
There's also an international effort going on for elder abuse across the world, and they're putting together kind of a coalition internationally as well.
And along those same lines, which we do in every seminar, we've talked about the generation of victims. Let's be realistic. I don't and have never written a congressman or a legislator or anybody, but seniors do. And we ask you to write letters to your congressmen, to your senators, to any legislator that you can, asking for stiffer penalties in elder abuse. Any Senate bill, any bill that comes across, write a letter to your congressman and ask for stiffer penalties, more money for education, because your generation is the one that's going to get it done.
Bill, you have a question?
Yeah, a basic question. As a citizen, say I suspect elder abuse. Do I call the Palm Springs Police Force first, or do I get in touch with you? How does that work? Who do I call?
You can call either one. Either one will respond. If you call law enforcement should make a cross-report to Adult Protective Services. If you call Adult Protective Services, they cross-report to law enforcement. So we cross-report to each other. It's going to come down to the type of report that you make. If you make it to law enforcement and they look at it as being something that's not a law enforcement response, they'll refer it to Adult Protective Services, and it goes both ways because we both get involved in both types of cases.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? Anybody?
I have one more. With regard to, and this would probably be directed to Margot, to become proactive, what steps do we really need to take? I mean, many of you indicated some of the things that should be done, but is there anything in print or anything that you would recommend that we should be doing in order to be more alert, one, and two, to be more proactive?
Well, the CARE program does have a book that teaches folks about the signs for consumer fraud and elder abuse. And we distribute that widely, so we certainly would encourage people to call our office and ask. We will mail the book. You can come and pick it up at our office or whatever. But it has a checklist. It has the regulatory agencies in it. It tells you who to call for what issues and for how you need help. And our staff is always available to help kind of guide folks in the right direction. The thing that we hate the most is to get phone calls from people who say, I've made 15 calls till I finally found you. And that kind of breaks our heart because by the time they get to us, they're so worn out that they can barely tell their story one more time. And so we want them to come to us first, and hopefully we can help reduce the stress. When you've been defrauded and you've lost money, you really, it is a stressful event. And we want to be able to reduce that stress and really reach out a hand and help folks out. So contact our office, 863-7661, and we will be glad to send you the booklet that has the checklists and the numbers that will help.
I have a question. I think, Kathy, this might be up your alley, although if anyone else has an answer. Is there counseling available for adult children of the elderly and or impaired parents to help them protect the interests of elderly and impaired parents without being considered abusive or exploitive? I mean, does your institution provide?
At this time, there is not from the financial institution side. I think maybe Michelle or Margot may be able to offer some as far as other types of available services. But unfortunately, right now, from the financial industry side, you're really just starting to see a grassroots movement toward education. I know from our institution, we're actually putting some posters in our lobbies that say we combat elder abuse, we report elder abuse. That's, again, it's really starting at a grassroots level, but as far as any type of educational, we haven't got there yet, but it's definitely an area, an arena we need to start addressing. Our marketing and business development people are starting to take interest in these areas and addressing these concerns, not only just from our elder customers, but from every aspect. I think that just also to address the gentleman before, as far as other resources, one of the biggest things we see, especially in the elder abuse area as far as financial, is identity theft. And because, again, these are the people that have the good credit histories and have the ability to really take off with their credit histories. So, again, another resource is the Federal Trade Commission website, or a Federal Trade Commission in general, who oversees the identity theft federally. And they have great information. They provide free booklets and pamphlets protecting your ID when you're a victim. They have a book that's available that's fantastic. It's available online, or they will send it to you. You can either contact myself. We have a supply of them in our offices. They actually have checklists of how to protect your information and what to do if you become a victim. Again, as Margot said, it's by the time they get to us, sometimes they've been victimized so much they just don't even know where to start. The other thing is the phone number, and I wish I would have brought it, is the new telemarketing phone number for the state. And Margot, I don't know if you have
It's
it.
brand new. I don't have it with me.
Okay. The state has just passed a rule or legislation that now you can put your name on a telemarketing list where they cannot contact you, a do not contact list. I encourage every senior, everybody, not just seniors, everybody to put their names on that list. And I know that you can go on the website, and I'm sure that Margot's offices will also have that number available
We do.
as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Marshall?
Yeah, I want to remind everybody that talk radio is an excellent vehicle to get education. I know my show is always available. I spoke to Gary Stone before this evening at KNWZ. He said he'll always be available to CARE or anybody else who wants to educate his audience. I spoke to Rich Gilgallen from KPSI. He's willing to invite these groups on anytime, and I'm sure Joey English at KPSI would also be more than willing to give free publicity and allow these people to educate our audiences. It's pretty vast between all the local talk shows out here.
Mike?
I had a hypothetical that maybe could give our audience a little bit of an idea. It's a nosy neighbor hypothetical. Let's say I noticed one of my neighbors, who's an elderly widow, is starting to decline a little bit, and she had her house painted, and the painter's truck is recognizable, and the job's been done for 6 months, but the truck is there a lot. It's there maybe once or twice a week, and I drive by, I see the truck, and I think, what's the painter doing there still? I mean, obviously he's not painting anymore. Now then, who would I contact in that situation? Would I be kept confidential, that I'd been the person that made the call, and what would be the likely scenario, or what would happen with the contact with my neighbor?
Michelle, do you want to go ahead?
That sounds like a lot of cases that we get calls on. Actually, any reporter, unless they waive confidentiality, any reporter information is held confidential to the victim and to, except for other agencies that we're legally able to share information with. And also, in terms of making reports, folks are protected under the Welfare and Institutions Code if they reasonably suspect that there's an issue. And this is certainly a suspicious situation. That truck's still there. And certainly our 800 number during business hours would be the place to call, the 800-491-7123. And believe it or not, we have a lot of calls that come in that are very sort of vague like that. They don't have any specific information, but a social worker is assigned to go out. And we generally go out in, by law, we're mandated a certain way we go out. It's either if it's imminent danger immediately or within 10 days. And most likely in this situation, we would go out within 10 days. Does that help?
Yes.
In a situation like that, look at it from a standpoint, if we can send a social worker out before law enforcement, a situation like that's not very, it doesn't appear to be very threatening initially. They like social workers for the most part. If we can send a social worker to go out and gather a lot of intelligence and a lot of information before we get involved, and then we meet with the social worker, there's a gamut of things that we can do to follow up and investigate. You know, we can go to the banking institutions, check her accounts, see if there's been a change in her banking history. If we can run the plate on the truck, find out who that belongs to. If we can find out who the driver is. If when the social worker interviews the victim, they happen to know his name. We can go as far as get a search warrant, look at his account history, see if his account history has gone from nothing from the time he's met your victim. All of a sudden, once he meets her, his account rises. So there's a gamut of stuff we can do, and it works to our benefit in the team aspect again, and we've talked a lot about teams. If we can send a nice, good-looking lady like Michelle in and be non-intrusive, non-threatening, and gather just tons of information that, as an investigator, I can use all day long and just do a total life history on the victim and a history on the suspect, and then we can go from there, and then we can just take the ball and run. So even a simple situation like that, you're right. A situation like that is very suspicious. There's no reason for him to be back there. And that happens a lot with mobile home repair people. We call them laydowns. You know, there's victims that Margot and I have worked cases to where they have had, you know, say their coach is worth $15,000. We just had a case to where our victim had $78,000 worth of work done on it, on a coach that was worth $15,000. He came back, God, what, Margot, 10 times, 15 times, and a guy writes him a check every time. So even something simple like that, just report it. And that helps us. Like I said earlier, help us, help the victims.
I'd like to throw my 2 cents in here, Mike. Part of your question was about the confidentiality, and I want to emphasize a caveat that Michelle threw out there. What you tell, and I'm speaking as an administrator who has frequently reported child abuse, suspected child abuse, once you report it to the agency, CPS or APS, that may be confidential, but once they turn it over to the police, say, your name, there's a good chance that your name will be mentioned. Now, that shouldn't discourage people from making these reports, but that is a caveat.
That is if you give your name, number one. Number two is, the example you give is great, but more frequently what happens is the painter will come back with a plumber, and then the painter will come back with a roofer, and then the painter will come back with somebody else. Remember, a lot of these elderly people are totally illiterate when it comes to computers, and they have no idea that people can create phony documents, phony credentials on a home computer. They're not aware. So I would say to Mike, in your hypothetical, err on the side of caution. They do this for a living. If you feel comfortable not giving your name, don't give your name. Just get somebody out there. They're lonely. They'll probably enjoy having a visitor. It is just better to take the chance.
I want to talk a little bit about the confidentiality aspect of that. Obviously, by the time something comes to our office, granted, a vast majority of all cases are plea bargain, but some of them will go to trial, and we cannot go to trial without witnesses. And the reality is that crimes are not stopped by police officers, and they're not stopped by district attorneys. They're stopped by community members who will not and refuse to put up with them. And if they don't, there will continue to be crimes. And I can see, you know, in certain communities in this county, where the neighbors are very active, and they just won't put up with people committing crimes in the neighborhood. And they're out there, they're on the phone to the police all the time. Those people are run off and they're gone, and those neighborhoods are low crime neighborhoods. On the other hand, there are other places in other communities where people are afraid. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to be known, that is all understandable. But you need to understand that crime will not be stopped unless people come forward and report. You will be anonymous if you call APS, but eventually at some point, again, as it works up towards trial, more and more people are going to be found. We send investigators out, and we need witnesses. Most people understand that, but we spend a lot of our time simply just talking to witnesses and explaining to them this process and how and why they must testify, why we need them.
Okay, we have about 4 minutes left. I want to get those numbers out on the air one more time.
Okay, the number for APS is 1-800-491-7123. I saw the number that just flashed up there was incorrect, and that's because I think I said it incorrectly the first time. Sorry. It's 1-800-491-7123. And for help with, that's for all other types of elder abuse. For help with consumer fraud issues, the number for the Indio office is 863-7661.
Oh, slower, please.
863-7661.
And one more time, for good measure, both numbers, please.
APS number, Adult Protective Services, 24-hour line, 1-800-491-7123. And the CARE office, 863-7661.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Jim.
Yes, I just want to mention that after hearing these unusual stories, I feel a little depressed, but I'll get over that. But for your information, as it was mentioned earlier, I'm with the California State Legislature, and I have a bill that I've written that I'm going to be presenting this fall at the yearly session, and it has to do with creating a team of experts in elder and dependent adult abuse who would perform prescribed duties related to the screening and documentation of elder abuse and related injuries. Now, what does this do? The University of California, Irvine, is preparing this model developed by Dr. Musqueda for the past 3 years, and they've been doing it under a grant, and it's going to run out, so I'm preparing this bill in order to continue the fund for this model. And it has a great deal of merits because they're talking about a model that would provide and establish a local dependent adult medical response team of trained medical experts in elder and dependent adult abuse. The team shall include a geriatrician, a nurse practitioner, gerontologist, psychologist, social worker, criminologist, and pharmacologist. The model would require the team to evaluate selected victims of elder and dependent adult abuse and provide state-of-the-art examination documentation, follow-up telephone or email consultation as necessary. And the team will examine the medical and psychological injuries of the elder abuse victim, documents, and injuries for subsequent legal action. This goes on and on. It has a very intense insight and provision, probably not to the extent ever used before, and it would be a great aid in following up injured senior citizens, senior adults, who just, when they are injured, they go to the hospital, they release them, and that's the end of it. But these people will follow through, see if there's any permanent injury, and follow up and see if they can be cured of it. And I hope you look for this in the future and wish me success in presenting it to the legislature.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jim.
Margaret.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have run out of time. I want to thank the panel. You did an outstanding job. It was very enlightening and very educational, and we appreciate your coming here and giving up your time to present this to our viewing public. Thank you very much. Commission, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good night.